I think all of us here is familiar with the word amen, right? We often say it without even thinking about its meaning. Amen was actually a word originated from the Hebrew Bible with the meaning so be it, let it be so, or truly. In a book about prayers in French written by a Jesuit priest entitled The Prayer of All the Hours, or I'll say it in French, La prière de toutes les heures, there was a story about a person who wanted to send his prayer to God. So he took out a piece of paper, but instead of filling the paper with all of his prayers and all the things that he wanted to ask from God, he left it blank. But at the bottom, instead of signing his name, he wrote Amen. And then he sent it to God. When God received the letter, God was so happy to see that everything was blank except the word Amen on the bottom. So God began to fill the paper with all of God's will, all the plans that God was trying to give that man. All the ups and downs, the good moments and bad, God filled it in order. Holy Week is an appropriate time for each one of us to reflect on the word Amen. So be it. Let it be so. Because Jesus himself has shown us the true meaning of that word today. We just heard about it. His obedience to the end, to the Father. It is very easy for us to say Amen when we are in good mood or when life goes smoothly. But in times of sickness, of misunderstandings, or of disappointments, or even in bad weather, or lovesick, or bad grades in exam, for example, how could we look at those bad and painful moments and say, Amen, let it be so? That is why a grain of sand, if it falls into our eyes, it will be a pain, and we would try all the ways possible to get it out. But if that same grain of sand falls into an oyster, it will be the beginning of a very beautiful pearl. Jesus transformed the cross with his suffering and death into the salvation of sins and death for all of us. When it is our turn, would we be able to receive, accept, and transform those painful and sorrowful moments into something more positive? So the first thing I'd like to share with you today is that we cannot run away from suffering, pain, or loss. But we can surely receive, accept, and transform them so that at least something good could come out of them. And we could always be ready to say, Amen. Let it be so. We say Amen to God's will. And in the two gospel readings we heard today, as I said in the beginning outside, there was a total contrast of the people's response, from enthusiasm and excitement to hatred and cruelty at the end. How did you feel when we all together say, crucify him, crucify him? The Jewish leader thought Jesus was a threat to their authority, to their power, to their privileges. So they were trying to get rid of Jesus. And the people thought Jesus was a rebel against the rule of the Roman Empire. But they were disappointed and turned their back at him. So today, as we are holding the palms in our hands and praise Jesus, let us pause a moment to think, who is Jesus to us and what we are expecting from him? Is Jesus just simply a powerful king who always gives us laws to restrict our freedom? Is Jesus simply a prayer responder whose job is simply to give us whatever we want? Is Jesus a mighty protector who keeps us safe until we don't need him anymore? So the second thing I'd like to share with you today is that following Jesus is not just about grace and blessing. but it is also about carrying the cross and dying on the cross. Understanding those two aspects of being disciples of Jesus, we would be able to accept, to learn, and to grow, rather to run away like the disciples in the Garden of Gethsemane. Just a funny detail, you heard in the gospel and you saw on the TV. There was a guy among Jesus' followers who ran away naked. You know who that guy was? Mark, the one who wrote the gospel. He put himself there, because he's the author. He wrote the thing. So, just the funny stuff to think about. And in the gospel reading about the passion of Jesus, we heard Jesus being handed over 6 times. Did anyone count it? 6 times we heard the term handed over. 1 time by Judas, 2 times by the chief priest, another time by the Jewish council, another time by Pilate, and 1 time by Jesus himself. And the reasons for these handling over were also different. Judas for money, the Jewish leaders because of jealousy, Pilate because he wanted to hold on to his power, and Jesus because of love. We can see that just one action of handling over, but we have many different reasons and motivations. This is a reminder for us to spend time to think carefully so that when we face difficult and puzzling situations, our conclusions and solutions could be thorough and not shallow. So my sisters and brothers, after a very long reading, in this beginning of Holy Week, we just welcomed Jesus with palms in our hands and listened about the passion of Jesus. And I have just shared with you 3 ideas so that we can reflect together. First, we cannot run away from suffering, pain, or loss, but we can surely receive, accept, and transform them so that at least something good could come out of them. And we could always be ready to say amen to God's will. So be it, God. Second, following Jesus is not simply about grace and blessings, but it is also about carrying and dying on the cross. Understanding those 2 aspects of being disciples of Jesus, we would be able to accept, to learn, and to grow, rather than to run away. And third, one action in life could be because of many different motivations and reasons. Let us spend time to think carefully when we face difficult and puzzling situations so that our conclusion and solution could be thorough and not being selfish and one-sided. Be ready to say amen to God's will. Following Jesus is both about grace and sacrifice, and try to look at everything from different angles. May God, who has begun a good work in us, also bring it to fruitful completion. Amen.
Amen.